Hello, and welcome to another episode of Creative Lifescaping. It's a mostly live interview series, and today is going to be a recording. I am super thrilled to invite my guest, Mr. Don Phin. So, Don sent me as his bio this. Don's an attorney, speaker, and coach. He lives in sunny Coronado, California, which is a beautiful place. But I met Don after reaching out to him after watching one of his LinkedIn courses. He's a ton of LinkedIn courses. The one I watched was on employee engagement. And he is way too humble. Don is a visionary thought leader. He's an author. He has a massive library of helpful tools, resources, and information that he shares with incredible generosity on his website. So I am thrilled to welcome Don. Welcome, Don.
Hey, how are you? Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's so great to see you. You probably don't have the chilly weather and the leaves turning like we do here.
No, but actually, my wife and I go hiking every weekend, and on Sunday we go 1 mile north from the coast to 6,000 feet, and we get some color and fall foliage and chillier weather, and it was wonderful. Perfect fall day for a hike.
That's great. Yeah, it's nice to have that variety. They talk about that.
We don't have the aspens that you folks do, but you know.
Well, we are here in Alberta anyway, in Calgary. We are obsessed with larches, which you might call tamaracks there. I'm not sure. Yeah. Because if you go up high in the Alpine, you've got these like golden larches, and they only turn for like 1 to 2 weeks. And, you know, you have this narrow window to catch them before the snow comes or the leaves fall or the needles fall off. So if you ever make it up here, I'll take you up to the high Alpine. We'll check out some larches.
Good. I have been at it. I have been out your way, as you know. I've spoken out there.
That's right. You did say that.
Went to Jasper and all that kind of stuff. It was fun.
Yeah. Well, you probably didn't find the hot secret local spot, so I'll take you next time.
No.
So, you know, in the spirit of the creative lifescaping, one of the questions I love to ask is, you know, you started out your kind of professional career as an attorney. Did you want to be an attorney as a kid, or what did you want to be when you were a little kid?
When I was a little kid, I wanted to get out of poverty. Okay, that's what I wanted to do when I was a little kid. Mm-hmm. All right, so I grew up in the South Bronx. After my parents divorced, it was just my mom raising me and my 2 younger sisters. So the main motivator for me and all my buddies was to get a job that got us the heck out of there, you know. And interestingly, most of my buddies wanted to get jobs in unions. They could be a cop, a fireman. They didn't have the grades that I did and my other best buddy did. We were the only 2 of all of us that had good grades. We ended up both becoming lawyers. If you're not going to become that union guy, then if you're going to be somebody super special, become my son the lawyer or my son the doctor. All right? There's no concept around entrepreneurship or any of that when I was a kid. You know, you either got a union job or you became some type of professional. That was the opportunities.
Yeah, that was the ticket out. Yeah. And did that motivation to get out of poverty, did that affect how you approach school? Like, did you deliberately apply yourself to school? Was it kind of a natural gift to get those grades?
No, look, I've always been a curious and a learner. Okay. My currency is learning more than money. That's what motivates me. And so I like the learnedness of the legal profession. I like the fact that it'll allow me to play the champion role for people, you know, that hero role. And I played it full tilt until it all came catching up on you, you know, as my little saying goes, when your story catches up with your reality, you'll have a midlife crisis. And I had mine at 40, just like so many people do, you know.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that, because I think from when we spoke before, that was the kind of event or the series of events that catalyzed your transition from trial attorney to what you're doing now, which is executive coach, speaker, author. Tell me a bit about that transition and how that fit into your midlife crisis.
My cases kind of ratcheted up. I represented employees, and towards the end of my career, I started taking on what's known as glass ceiling cases, particularly women engineers who are at the very top of their profession. When you're at the top of the profession in engineering, you go into the program offices at Hughes Aircraft or General Dynamics. So it's the program office you want to be in. And they didn't want any women in the program office. They didn't want them in their lunchroom, the executive lunchroom, all this kind of stuff. So that was some of the real first really nasty. The other sexual harassment case, one person, this was bigger push against large defense contractors. So here I am by myself taking on these used aircraft and General Dynamics, and okay, let's fight, And then it got ratcheted up even one more level when I took on nuclear power plant whistleblowers and engineers complained about design flaws here at San Onofre and Diablo Canyon. So that's when my life turned into a John Grisham novel. I had never lost a case I took to trial prior to that. They would not let me take those cases to trial. We were out on appeals for over 6 years. My clients and I said, this is not justice. We don't want to put our lives on hold anymore. It's not worth the money that you're trying to get the big hit out of it. And so that's when they said, let's take what we can get and run. And I quit litigation.
Oh, did you see that as a failure? Like, what was that case? Is it just like too much?
I saw litigation as wasting 17 years of my life.
Ah, gotcha.
Because there's a story. Look, the story is I'm going to be some conquering hero. All the self-sacrifice that went into putting in 70-hour work weeks, killing the first marriage, all for the cause. And then realizing that 4 out of 5 people who I put at least 6 figures in their pockets all the time, it wouldn't be worth it me doing for less than that. Every 4 out of 5 of them were broke within 3 years. And I don't know, what's the point? What's the point? Put all this stress, all this conflict, all the looking backwards, trying to prove I was right back then, limiting your ability to look forward, getting the money, and money just makes people more of who they already are. If you're enveloped in a victim mentality and you get sanctified, then you're a sanctified victim. You don't become some hero, and the money just disappears. And so whether you win a lottery, when you win a lawsuit, when you get an inheritance, whether you get a PI settlement, when any of these things, money just makes people more of who they already are.
Yeah, and it sounds like it wasn't aligned with what you wanted to do in the first place, which was help.
Like, I wanted to make a difference. So to the extent I made some dents out there, early on, you think you're going to change the whole world, right? I'm going to change the world. Then you have to finally come to the resting place in your career. No, I'll put my dent in the universe. All right. So I realized that was, despite all the extreme effort, that the dent I put in at that point was very small.
That's interesting. So you felt like it sounds to me, I have this image of you, Don, beating a car and like with a huge hammer and not making a dent and realizing you just need like a little tiny thing to make the dent. I don't know. That's the image that came to mind.
Again, there's a whole story about the litigation. And listen to me, I was supposed to be an expert in a trial. I was going to testify 2 days ago. They didn't want me testifying. They settled the case, but they settled it for over $800,000. So the attorney get 40% of that. But then there's those cases, you get those verdicts and they're on appeal for 3 years and people just get stretched out even more. The trial comes with a risk. It's a 50-50 proposition when you go to trial. So it's a lot of gunslinging. Yeah. And it's a lot of, you got to deal with lawyers all day.
Well, so tell me about.
That's saying enough right there,
My brother's a lawyer, so I know. When I was asking,
if he's a litigator, then that's a whole separate breed from all the other lawyers.
Yeah, he's not. He's in the Foreign Service now, so he's not really litigating at all.
This is litigation all day long, 70 hours a week.
That can't be good for your adrenal glands and your stress.
You just drink more.
Well, and yeah, it's very culture of that, isn't it? So tell me about creativity. Whether as an attorney, like how do you think attorneys are like lawyers are creative, and how does creativity play into your role now, like as being a speaker in a court?
Sure. So, the law to a certain degree is a box. There's all these rules about how you try cases. There's all these rules about preparing for cases, and there's all these rules about how you deal with juries. So there is room for creativity. But a lot of the creativity is in your ability to be a storyteller. So the very top trial lawyers, the Jerry Spencers of the world, are amazing trial lawyers. I get this little bird in my hand, and they come up with these amazing stories. So that's where the creativity is part of that. The other creativity is how you set people up for stuff. I'll give you an example of a creative thing I did in a trial. One of the complaints, one of the things that managers are always told to do is you've got to document poor behavior. If any manager hasn't heard that, then they've been deaf, right? So a woman complained that she was retaliated against for complaining about sexual harassment. And they go, no, she had attendance problems. That's why she was fired. So I have the manager who said it was attendance problems on the stand. And I said, sir, there's no documentation of the attendance problems. You have at some point in your career heard that you should document poor performance, correct? And if he says no, he looks like an idiot, right? So
Yes.
really, okay. So he had to say yes. And so I said, in my experience, the reason why people won't document something, even though they've been trained, is because it's either not all that important or they didn't have the time. So which was it in your case? Obviously, you're telling me it was pretty important. Isn't that correct?
Yeah.
Yep. So I'm setting them up the whole way. So it's really an issue. It was really an issue of time, wasn't it? Yeah. I said, okay, Your Honor, may I approach the bench? And I come up to the bench, I got a blank piece of paper and a pen. And I said, Your Honor, what I'd like to have him do is write down on this date that she was late for 10 minutes and sign it. I want to see how long that takes because he said time is the issue. And the judge just smiles and opposing counsel. So sir, you told me, right in front of the whole, how long it takes to write the note. That's an example of what lawyers can do on a creative situation. You have to set it up, so you don't even care what the answer is on the last question.
Yep.
Whichever way they answer it, it's going to look stupid, right?
How satisfying is that? It's like
that's a real art, and you're trained on that art. There's a lot of teaching around those trial skills. So that's where the creativity lies in there. All right.
So how do you define creativity? Like if I were to say, what does creativity mean to you? What would you say?
Creating new things.
It's
about creation. It's creativity. So, but what? Here I am now. I leave litigation, and part of I wanted to be able to do some quote creative things, and part of my self-talk is I'm not all that creative. Okay, just like everybody else. So, now you go into a kindergarten room. Nobody in there has a self-talk. I'm not creative. Okay, it kind of gets talked out of us in a way. And so I started reading all the literature I could on creativity. Richard Van Och's Whack Up the Top of the Head, Edward de Bono's Six Hats. I'm trying to remember some of the other people that I went to, even some of the learning stuff that went on about agile workplaces and all those types of things, because that's in a sense, creativity too. Yeah. And what I realized is that I was getting more and more creative as I studied my creativity. It started, little ideas would start going off. I was connecting dots differently. When I talk about creativity, it's like two disparate thoughts coming together. Whoever thought that the fermented juice from an agave plant, when attached to squeezed lime, would produce the nectar of the gods called a margarita? Okay, somebody actually created that one day. There's an act of creation. Every cocktail is an act of creation. All right. So one of the fun things is I actually did a workshop on creativity, and I had all of us go to a kindergarten room that was not being used because it was closed. It was in the summer months. And we're all sitting on little kindergarten seats, all that stuff around us, we're all laughing so hard, we're all channeling our inner creativity. It was the perfect environment to do that workshop. It was hilarious.
It is. It's like transporting back, and like, it's almost like being in the kindergarten room was what gave you permission, but why can't we do that when we need to in like a work situation? Like, can you imagine a bunch of CEOs bringing their, executives into a kindergarten, like a room set up like a kindergarten?
They all loved it right away. Everybody loved it right away. How can you not? I mean, you're channeling your inner youth,
Well, and most of the time when we think back to when we were kids and when we were smiling and laughing and feeling really empowered, we were doing something creative. So I would love to know. So for anybody what's that, sir?
Even if it was bad.
Exactly. We were clueless about the judgment,
that's really
right?
creative what you just did there,
Yeah. And it's not till we get to like 5, 6 years old that we start realizing people have an opinion about what we're creating. That's the great thing about younger kids is they don't really know the difference. One of the things, so if you're joining us late, I'm here with Don Phin, who is an attorney, speaker, coach, executive coach. He's a phenomenal guy. I'm just going to put up your LinkedIn profile here in case you want to connect with Don. And and Don works with a lot of CEOs. And I'd love to know about your work with CEOs, specifically around creativity. Like, do they think they're creative? Do they think it's a bad word? I hear that a lot. How are CEOs, how are they with their creativity?
Okay. And I don't want to forget the thing we talked about earlier about the judgment attachment to it. Okay.
Yes.
So don't forget to get to that.
I won't.
Very few people are going to be in a CEO role if they don't have some measure of creativity. You can't, as a backdrop, I've had an opportunity to speak for CEO groups more than 400 times. So that's primarily who I speak to is CEOs. And I did all around the United States, all around Canada too. All right. And by their very nature, some of them have very disruptive businesses, but somebody might just be a large CPA firm, and even within that space, they try to be a little bit more creative around maybe their culture or how they're positioning themselves. Right now, I think employers have to get really creative about how they're positioning themselves to give them the great quit and all that kind of good stuff. So they tend to be creative. And I do talk about creativity, and I'll share with you the talk track that I've been doing, and I've been doing a lot of it lately. I like to keep things simple, all right, because simple gets done. And I give people frameworks. So I like a framework. And the framework for going through our times today is 3 words: responsibility, grace, and creativity. So I'll slow down on that.
Yeah.
So what I say from a logical standpoint, the only logical, when I coach executives, I say the only logical question you have to ask yourself is, have I been completely responsible in this situation? That's the umbrella question for all the logic, is the responsibility. Okay. Am I financially responsible, this responsible, that? So that anything else I need to do to be more responsible here, because the beauty of being completely responsible is emotionally you can let go. So if stuff happens, even though you've been responsible, not so much attachment. I invest responsibly and the marketplace goes up and down. I'm going to, it's just what it is. I don't have to, I have no guilt because I've been responsible about it. So the only time we have guilt, regret, and remorse is when we know we've been less than fully responsible. This is true at work and home. And with ourselves, we beat ourselves up about our own real irresponsibility all the time. Okay. So that's the logical umbrella thought. The emotional umbrella thought is grace. So I said, okay, how do we show up? And what word would I want to use to how we could show up the best? And the word grace surfaced, and a lot of people resonate with that as the word. If you were to say that person's so graceful, I can't think of a better word to define how somebody shows up than gracefully. Okay. So, and you might pick another word. That's the word I picked.
I love that word. I think it's perfect.
And then I get into how we show up gracefully, and that's the conversation I have around 40-40. Okay. How we show up gracefully. I get this much space, you get that space, and the creativity is in the middle.
Okay.
So creativity comes out of dialogue. If Congress wants to create some solutions, they're going like this. They're not coming to the line here. You come to the line here. We'll figure it out in the middle, which is where things get done. And that's where creativity comes from. There's, as Byron Katie might say, there's my stuff, there's your stuff, and there's God's stuff. That's where the creativity comes out of God stuff. Okay. So it comes out of that middle place, but we have to allow for that space for the creativity, emotionally allow for the space for that creativity, not just logically, emotionally.
Yeah, and I love that it's such a visual structure. I want you to tell me more about the book and who it's for, but I love that because you imagine that sometimes if if someone is coming all the way 60-40, then they're not getting their voice heard and they're not making that room for creativity because there's none of that elasticity in the middle. So I just love how visual that 40-40 concept is.
Yeah.
So maybe is that the crux of your 40-40 book, is along these 3 principles and how to do that better in business?
No, it's primarily along the grace part of it. I discussed very briefly responsibility and creativity, but the fact is the way out of being stuck is through creativity. Okay. So anytime we're stuck, we've got to be creative. All right. When all of our speaking got wiped out by the pandemic, you and I had to be very creative very quickly, get to use these technologies well, get really good equipment, all that kind of stuff, make your mistakes and figure it out. So
be willing to fail, right? Which is a huge part of creativity.
You're going to fail.
Yes.
I don't even say willing to fail. I said, there's going to be hiccups, and as long as I'm acting responsibly, I don't have to get attached to those hiccups emotionally. So it's just what it is. It's part of the process. Okay.
Yeah. And it's funny because I actually did a stand-up open mic last night. And when I say I do stand up, people say it's so terrifying. And it's the same kind of thing. You think it's not that terrifying because I know people aren't going to laugh at all my jokes. Like that's just the reality of it. And we have this big brain that we can use to like hack these outdated survival instincts to say like, it's going to be okay if, the millennial doesn't laugh at my joke about parenting, like it's going to be okay. So, I love that you have to be willing to fail. And I will,
might laugh at this point. The Gen Z won't.
No, the Gen Z. That's what I'm like. It's not really millennials anymore, isn't it? Gen Z, like
millennials, all parents now.
I know. Well, what's a 20? If someone was 20, would they be a Gen Z or a millennial?
Gen Z is the last one we've named so far. Yeah.
Oh, so who's the oldest Gen Z? How old would they be?
Probably about 40 now.
A Gen Z? Oh, okay. Wow.
I want to take that back. No, because a millennial.
No, millennials are like 40 something.
My son's a Gen X. They're just past millennials, so we probably add 20 years. They're probably about 20 now, the Gen Z, be my guess.
Well, I call them Gen Z because I'm in Canada. Okay, so
let's get into the other thing that I was talking about, and this is a big, big, big deal around creativity, okay?
Yeah.
The major blockage to creativity, and you brought it up with me earlier when we were kind of prepping for this, and that's the whole business about judgment, right? So one of the things I also do is I built an HR company. I've coached many HR executives. People have me come in to redo how they think about HR. And I've done personality profiles on dozens and dozens of HR executives. Okay. And I could almost show you a slide from the presentation I do to them where one of the major things they're concerned about is other people's judgment. Okay. So you think about the HR person, they're really assigned a lot of times very compliance oriented, like a CFO, they got to do certain things. And so a lot of times they're called the department and no, they're telling people you can't do that because the law says you can't do it, or the policy says you can't do that. And so they're very good at black and white. That's their job, to be very good at black and white. But if you want to be strategic, whether it's in finance or HR or safety or any of those things that are very black and white, you have to come out of that box, all right? And people who try to do and assigned the task of having to do everything right are very concerned about judgment. Judgment will throw them off. So the HR person chooses not to try to be creative because they don't want to suffer the judgment. Okay. And that's a big deal, because a salesperson, for example, is the opposite end of the spectrum. A salesperson gets judged and criticized and fails a whole bunch of times every day. And if they don't have a thick skin for that, they'll never be good at sales, right? the HR person is the opposite end of the spectrum. Accounting's the opposite end of the spectrum. A lot of us are the opposite end of the spectrum, where we're afraid to put our creativity out there because we know it comes with judgment. Right? I know that every time I write something, every time I do a workshop, it's my creativity. It's going to come with judgment. Early on, I used to get thrown off by it. I'll be honest. Early on, if somebody criticized the presentation, I'd be like, "Oh my God, am I really that bad?" You know, that kind of thing. And you start realizing that you're not going to ever make everybody happy. There's no one art piece that appeals to everybody, or a piece of music that appeals to everybody, or book that appeals to everybody. And so you just go out there and do your best, and the universe will take it where it wants to go, you know?
Do you, one of the things, because I'm like you, I got some when I get harsh criticism, sometimes, I mean, I really like constructive feedback because like you, I like to learn, I want to get better. So I don't want people to sugarcoat or stroke my ego. But I find my perspective is for that really harsh, personal, negative criticism that doesn't offer any like constructive pieces. I feel like it's more about the person making the criticism, about their fears and, whatever's triggered in them. What do you think about that? Like people who give like constructive feedback versus the people who are just trolls or just rude or personal.
You just ignore those people, okay? If you just ignore them. I don't get caught. Wow. So part of the discussion about the drama triangle that's in this book is I don't allow myself to play victim on me, and I don't allow other people to play victim on me, okay? So if I see a negative comment, I'm not going to step on some emotional stage with it. My way of staying off stage is to say, wow, that's interesting.
So how do you do that? Is that the mechanism? You just said, wow, that was interesting? Because
wow, that's interesting.
If you're like a new person sharing your creativity with the world, and this is new for you, and knowing that you're going to fail and knowing you're going to get criticism, what are the steps or suggestions you would tell someone when they do get that harsh criticism? Because it's going to come. Like, what would you say? I mean, it's easy to say, I'm not going to step on that emotional stage. That's, but how do you do that? Do you have any ideas?
Well, you first of all realize there is one. Okay, you realize that you're putting it out there. It's not just some logical pursuit you're putting out there. All right. And you're not just looking for a logical response. It's an emotional thing you're putting out there, and you're looking for the emotional response. So just realize and be prepared that some people are going to be negative. All right. Some people are going to be complete assholes. Okay. And they're out there, the trolls and all that stuff. Every artist has those people. Every musician has those people. All right. So the business of, putting it out there, you just worry about the people that it does resonate with. Okay. You just worry about them, and don't shut your ear to criticism, because some of it may be accurate and they're just not good communicating about it.
Good
so
point.
it's the old Byron Katie. Is that true? Is it true? Is it true that this was boring? Somebody says, yeah, that was a completely boring presentation. Is it true?
Yeah.
Well, what if it was true?
Yeah.
Maybe I've got to, that's what I need to know, where I can improve stuff, because I'm going into it realizing I'm going to have to improve it. Maybe it was a little bit boring.
Yeah.
Is that potentially true? Yeah, potentially true. Okay.
How can I change it? Yeah.
You just ask yourself, it's a self-inquiry. Is this helpful? Is it true? Or it's just ignore it and go next?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And that's helped me is, number one, name it. So knowing this is me reacting emotionally to this.
Yep.
And this is not the moment for me to try. And this is what's happened to me one specific time when I was working for a company, and I did some educational presentations and got a few harsh criticisms, very personal, very cutting. I don't know what I did to offend these people or what it was about, but I had a very strong emotional reaction to it. And I recognized in that moment, I'm having an emotional reaction to this. I've had lots of other good feedback. this is not the time for me to try to evaluate this feedback for help. So I tried to just ride that emotion instead of like stop it. And then I went back to it when, you know, the emotion had dissipated a little bit to say, okay, is this true? Is there something in here? And there were a few things I changed about my presentation, but it's very hard not to just react in the moment and just either completely dismiss it or like get wrapped up into this like emotional spiral of like, oh, I must be terrible at it.
Hey, look, I couldn't agree more. We're going to hit those spots. You know, not every Van Gogh is a great painting, okay? So not every presentation I've done is a great presentation. You know, just like any performer, you'll have your good days and your bad days. You know, there's people in the Hall of Fame in a million different sports and activities who've had their bad days, all right? So I expect them. I've just got to watch separating their noise from reality.
Yeah.
So, for example, when you speak on highly emotional topics like I do, the emotional intelligence world and all that kind of stuff, you're going to hit people right between the eyes sometimes, and they don't like it. They don't want to have to deal with the reality of it. And I'll get a low score from that person. A lot of times, the chair of that CEO group say they needed it more than anybody. You know, they're just really resistant to your message. So
it's hit a nerve, so to speak.
Yeah, I look at that criticism to say, is there anything? Typically, what will happen is they'll touch on something that I already know is an issue, or already wish was better, and they just scratch that thing really hard. You know, I'm like, God damn it, I knew it. You know, I knew it. You know, that's the ones that really, you know, kind of hit me. The other ones are just like, that's their issue, you know. But when they do say something that I had a little inkling about, that's the ones that, you know, grab my attention.
Yeah. It's being humble enough to be open to criticism, but also not letting it stop you from sharing what you think is important with the world. So
early on, when we had, I don't know about your experience, but the hybrid meetings were the hardest. So I've got 5 CEOs sitting here and 7 of them online. Now, how do I deal with this? If everybody's online, you can see all their faces. Now I've got them very distant. I can't see their nameplates and all that kind of good stuff. And so it's very awkward. In the first presentation, one of the chairs gave me some criticism. I said, all right, I get it. I hear you. And the next day he goes, that was amazing, the change you made.
So you went to the same group the next day?
No, it's his other CEO group the second day, but I switched how I presented, and everybody loved it, and I learned a lesson from it.
That's how you learn, right? Like you said, you will fail, and the resilience is going to be getting up again. And if you don't face failure, you'll never be able to get up from it. So you'll never build resilience. So if you want to be better in, you know, in adversity, you have to have adversity in the first place.
Here's the other thing that that's been very helpful to understand is sometimes we just have to do things. And you know, if I just have to go to the gym, I just have to do this study, I just have to go. When I had to go to law school, I had to go to class, right? When I went to law school, some of my classmates had the story that law school was going to be hard. So what was it for those classmates? Hard. I had already had a tough start in life. I started law school with 2 kids. I was paying my own way through it. There was no support any place. I already knew hard. But here I am. I signed up for this voluntarily. It was all about learning, which I love. All I had to do is take in information and regurgitate information. How hard is that? That's not hard. I'll show you people have hard jobs. That ain't hard, okay? And so I decided to have 3 years of fun doing that. I was paying for it all. I might as well have fun doing it. So I took the same tests, did the same study, same classes, same degree. I had 3 years of having fun. They had 3 years of hard. So one thing I've learned, and this I had it applied to my own entrepreneurship, is that it doesn't have to be hard. You just have to do certain things, and you don't have to necessarily add the label on top of what you have to do. That's going to be hard. You just go to the gym. You don't have to say this is going to be hard going to the gym. You just go to the gym. And if you're going to label it, this is easy going to the gym. All right. I got this. I know how to go to the gym. I can get in the car and go like this. So it's not that hard going to the gym. It's not that hard learning and becoming more creative. You just have to do certain things to get you there. but you don't have to label that this is going to be difficult or hard. Just do what you got to do.
Yeah. And I think, what you're speaking, when you talk about that, it reminds me of like being mindful, because if you think about the future, you think about it being hard. But if you're staying in the moment, you don't think about it being hard, because you're just going to the gym. I'm just getting in my car and I'm driving my car. Right. So I think that's where mindfulness comes in, because we don't put as many labels on things, because we're just doing whatever we're doing in this moment, whether it's driving.
And to your point, if you're going to go to the future, then have a future positive. So let's say I'm not in good shape, and I go to the future and say, and the future self is in great shape. So instead of saying I'm a less than now, and when I get there I'll be a more than, you bring that future into the present and say I'm in great shape in process.
Yes.
So after I had some financial debacle, after I quit litigation and started an environmental nonprofit. That's a whole nother story. It was very non-profitable.
So the definition, nonprofit.
It was supposed to be a not-for-profit, not a nonprofit. But anyway,
okay. There's a difference.
And so then I had to learn some real lessons around money and stuff like that. And I was telling myself, when I have money again, then I'll feel smart and feel good about myself. I said, no, that's not going to work. And I realized I had to hold myself then as a millionaire in the making. And I don't believe that would have happened if I had not held myself that way then. So you can hold yourself as somebody highly creative in the making.
I love that. I love that reframe.
No, so that's who I am now. When I went to law school, it was a law school in the making. We've all done this with ourselves. I'm this in the making. Well, you can apply that to stuff outside of going to school.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's so much gold there about, relabeling your current experience to make it more, I guess, attainable to get to the future state you're looking for. Right. So.
Yep.
Well, I've got your website here, donphin.com. He has so many resources on there that are free, and
creativity checklists on there.
Oh, the creativity checklist. I forgot about that. Yes, there's a creativity checklist. And Don also has a plethora of courses on LinkedIn Live. You told me you just taped a whole bunch more of them this week. Yeah. And that's how we met, was I watched one of your courses. I think it was the employee engagement one that I saw.
Yeah, that's one we just did it. So we did that in 2017. It was translated to 4 languages, watched over 180,000 times, and they wanted to keep their content fresh. So instead of going to their studios up in Carpinteria, which is south of Santa Barbara, they shipped 7 boxes of equipment to my house. So fortunately, I'm pretty savvy with that stuff already, and my setup was faster than most people's, and I'm a professional speaker, so I got through my content. They have a lot of experts that are not necessarily professional speakers, so it takes them a little longer. So they scheduled me for 4 days, and it got done in a day and a half, and everybody was happy.
I love it. I love it, Don. You're a mover and a shaker. So please connect with Don with his website or on his LinkedIn profile. And I'm not going to forget the truth or dare section. And Don, I am very impressed you chose dare. Nobody chooses dare. Most people choose truth. So
they want to control the situation. I want to be out of control right now.
Exactly. So my dare for you is to tell me what you're going to do this weekend, but I want you to do it in sign language. And if you really know sign language, I want you to invent your own sign language to tell me what you're going to do. I don't know sign
language, so.
Driving somewhere. You're going to wash your car. Then you're going to go pick apples?
Oh.
No. What are you picking? You're going to go on a roller coaster?
Oh.
Shopping. You're going to go grocery shopping.
Then you go.
Then you're going to get back in your car. You're going to go to the gym. You're going to go to the gym.
Gym. Nighttime.
You're going to go to the club. You're going to dance.
Yes. Then next day you go.
Then you're going to go hiking. You're going to come to Calgary and visit me this weekend. Yes. I love it. Thank you. You're such a good sport, Don. And I feel like such a kindred spirit with you. I'm also a passionate curiosity, lifelong learner. And I'm so
Yeah, I
glad.
love the work you're doing. That's great.
Thank you. Yeah. And I'm, and the depth of experience you have working with CEOs and high performers and, your 40/40 solution book are all such great resources. And I encourage everybody to check those out. And I can't wait to connect again soon.
Yeah, please, let's do that.
Sounds good. Thanks, Don. Enjoy your grocery shopping and gym. And
That's the honeydew Saturday morning chores, and then I go to the gym. Then we go dancing every Saturday night. We go hiking every Sunday morning. So there you go.
That sounds like a great weekend.
Life is good. All right.
Okay, take care.